The last sliver of a crescent moon hangs like a silver shaving in the ink-black sky, offering no real light to the cobblestones below. The only sounds are the distant, rhythmic clang of a ship's bell from the harbor and the skittering of a rat in the alley beside you, a tiny, frantic heartbeat in the sleeping city. A fog, thick as wool and smelling of damp earth and the cold Delaware River, wraps around the brick-fronted houses, muffling the world and making it feel as if you are the only person awake in all of Philadelphia. But you're not. From a few streets over, another sound cuts through the quiet. The frantic, desperate gallop of a horse, ridden far too fast for these slick, uneven stones. That lone rider carries a warning that will shatter the fragile peace of a continent, igniting a war that will pit neighbors against each other and force ordinary people like you, a merchant just trying to keep your shop afloat, to make impossible choices. It's easy for us, centuries later, to look back at 1776 as a year of glorious revolution and powdered wigs, but for those living through it, it was a terrifying plunge into chaos. There were no guarantees, no certain outcomes, just the chilling realization that the world you knew was about to be torn apart. So tonight we're going to step into that uncertainty. We're going to explore the American Revolution not from the battlefield, but from the flickering candlelight of a Philadelphia merchant's home. You probably won't survive this emotionally. Before you get too comfortable, if you feel a connection to these journeys into the past, take a quiet moment to like the video and subscribe. It means the world, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to see where you're tuning in from tonight, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into our story together. You awaken in a dimly lit room, the scent of wood smoke and brewing chamomile tea hanging heavy and comforting in the air. A log shifts in the hearth, sending a soft cascade of orange sparks up the chimney. Outside, the wind whispers and moans around the eaves of your townhouse, a mournful sound that seems to carry the anxieties of the entire city. Below you, the floorboards of your shop creak a familiar rhythm as the old wood settles, a sound that has been the backdrop to your entire life. But tonight, it doesn't sound like home. It sounds like a ship groaning under strain, about to splinter. A storm is brewing, not just in the dark clouds rolling in from the west, but within the very soul of Philadelphia. This is your story, in the year of our Lord, 1776. Your name is Bathsheba Scott, and the world of weights, measures, and ledgers is the one you understand best. You are a merchant. Your father was a merchant, and his father before him. You trade in fine fabrics, imported spices, good English tea, and the quiet satisfaction of a balanced account book. Your days are usually a predictable and pleasant affair, a polite dance of commerce and conversation. But lately, the dance has become a dirge. You pull a thick woolen shawl tighter around your shoulders and make your way downstairs. The tea is still warm on the hob, and you pour yourself a cup, the ceramic warm against your palms. Your shop is at the front of the house, its large window looking out onto the street. You stand there for a moment, peering through the rippled glass at the pre-dawn gloom. Even at this hour, the tension is a palpable thing, a low hum you can feel in your teeth. Later that morning, with the fog burned away by a pale, watery sun, you venture out to the high street market. It's a place that normally fills you with a sense of purpose. The vibrant chaos of it all, the calls of the vendors, the smell of fresh bread and ripe produce, the gossip traded over barrels of salted fish, is the lifeblood of the city. But today, the air is different. It's sharp, brittle. You see it in the way people cluster in tight, anxious groups, their voices low and urgent. You're ostensibly here for fresh eggs and a wheel of cheese, but you're really here to listen. You are a merchant, after all, and information is a currency more valuable than any shilling. You pause by a stall selling apples, pretending to inspect the fruit while you tune your ears to a nearby conversation. A complete madness. A portly man in a fine waistcoat sputters, his face the color of a plum. To defy the crown is to defy God himself. We are Englishmen. To forget that is treason. Quote, "We are Englishmen who are taxed without a voice, Robert," a younger man in a leather apron retorts, his voice taut with indignation. "They treat us not as sons, but as a purse to be emptied at their whim. I say to hell with the king and his tariffs." Quote, the older man gasps, clutching at his chest as if the words themselves were a physical blow. "Have you lost your senses, boy? Such talk will see you hanging from a gallows." The words hang in the air, sharp as shards of glass. You see it everywhere. Loyalist versus patriot, Tory versus Whig. The arguments are no longer confined to pamphlets and taverns. They've spilled into the open, poisoning the simple act of buying groceries. The cost of everything has skyrocketed, especially your beloved tea. A personal tragedy of the highest order. Rumors spread like a fever. Tales of skirmishes in Massachusetts, of munitions being stockpiled in the countryside, of a great Continental Congress meeting just blocks from your home, deciding your fate without ever asking your opinion. You are an adventurer at heart, one who dreams of seeing new ports and trading in exotic goods, but this is a kind of adventure you never asked for. This is chaos. You secure your purchases and turn to leave, your pleasant morning routine thoroughly soured. As you navigate the throng, a familiar voice calls your name. Bathsheba, a moment. Quote, you turn to see your cousin, Thomas Paine. He's a fisherman, though you've always thought his gentle, thoughtful nature was ill-suited to the harsh realities of the sea. He has the far-off look of a poet and the calloused hands of a laborer, a walking contradiction you've always been fond of. Today, however, the usual calm in his eyes is gone, replaced by a storm that mirrors the one in the city. Thomas, you say, forcing a polite smile. It's good to see you. How is the catch? Quote. He shakes his head, his gaze sweeping over the tense crowds. The fish are plentiful, but the minds of men are troubled. Walk with me? You nod, and the two of you fall into step, moving away from the clamor of the market toward the quieter docks. The smell of salt water and tar replaces the scent of produce, a smell you've always associated with Thomas. He's quiet for a long moment, his tactful nature wrestling with the urgency of his thoughts. You hear the whispers, I know, he finally says, his voice low. You have a better ear for it than anyone. Quote, it's hard to miss, you reply, your tone a little more blunt than you intend. Men who have been neighbors for 20 years now look at each other as if they're strangers. Or worse, enemies. It's bad for business. He gives a sad, small smile, always the merchant. He stops and turns to you, his expression so serious it sends a shiver down your spine, despite the mildness of the day. Bathsheba, this is more than just whispers and bad business. It's coming. What is coming, Thomas? More taxes? Another boycott? We've weathered those before. You try to keep your voice light, dismissive. Panic is a luxury you can't afford. Your livelihood depends on stability, on the predictable flow of goods and coin. This talk of something more is a threat to the very foundation of your world. No, he says, his eyes locking onto yours. War. A real war. I was at the tavern last night, mending my nets. Some men came in, sailors from Boston. The things they've seen. Redcoats marching in the streets as an occupying army. Men being dragged from their homes. They say the king is sending thousands more soldiers. They say there will be no more compromise. Quote, you stare at him, at his earnest, worried face. It all sounds like so much hyperbole, the kind of heated speculation you'd expect from a tavern full of rum. A war? Here? It's unthinkable. Preposterous. A conflict between a scattered collection of colonies and the mightiest empire the world has ever known. It would be a slaughter, not a war. That's just talk, Thomas, you say, a little too quickly. Sailors' tales and tavern gossip. People are angry, but they aren't fools. They won't throw their lives away for a principle. Quote, won't they, he asks softly. I think you underestimate how much principle means to a man who feels he has nothing left to lose. I'm worried for you, Sheba. For all of us. You want to argue, to poke holes in his dire predictions with your own cool logic, but you can't. Because as you look into his frightened eyes, you see not a rum-soaked sailor, but your thoughtful, steady cousin. And you remember the sound from this morning, the frantic gallop of a horse in the dark. You remember the hatred in the voices at the market. You feel the truth of his words settle in your stomach like a cold stone. You offer him a weak, unconvincing smile. You worry too much, cousin. It will all blow over. Quote, he doesn't look convinced. He just nods slowly, a deep sadness in his expression. I pray you're right. He leaves you there by the docks, with the gulls crying overhead and the scent of the sea turning sour in your nostrils. You dismiss his concerns as mere speculation, the nervous flutterings of a man too gentle for these hard times. But as you walk the long way home, through streets that feel both familiar and foreign, his worried tone follows you, a persistent echo that sends a shiver of pure, undiluted fear right down your spine. Something significant is about to happen. You can feel it in the air, in the water, in the very cobblestones beneath your feet. And you have a terrible, sinking feeling that when it does, all the polite smiles and balanced ledgers in the world won't be enough to save you. The rest of the day passes in a blur of forced normalcy. You arrange and rearrange bolts of linen, the familiar textures doing little to soothe you. You tally figures in your ledger, the crisp lines of ink and sharp numbers usually a balm to your orderly mind, but today they feel like a foreign language. The city outside your window seems to be holding its breath. Every shout in the street, every carriage that rumbles past, sends a fresh jolt of anxiety through you. Thomas's words, war, a real war, have taken root in your mind, a poisonous vine strangling all sense of security. As dusk settles, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and blood orange, you find a small, folded piece of paper slipped beneath your shop door. It wasn't there an hour ago. Your heart hammers against your ribs as you pick it up. There is no name, no seal, just a simple address scrawled in charcoal, the cooper's workshop down by the waterfront. Beneath it, a time, the 9th hour. It's a clandestine invitation, a whisper in the encroaching dark. You know with a certainty that chills you to the bone what it is. A gathering. A prayer service, not in the hallowed sunlit halls of Christchurch, but in the shadows, amongst the wood shavings and barrels. A prayer for victory. Part of you, the sensible merchant, screams to throw the paper into the fire. This is sedition. This is treason. To be found there would mean ruin, the seizure of your property, a cell in the Walnut Street jail. But another part of you, the part that has always yearned for distant shores and felt the pull of the unknown, feels a strange compulsion. Thomas's fear was contagious, and you find you cannot simply sit here, waiting for the world to end. You need to see the faces of those who would risk everything. You need to understand. An hour later, wrapped in your plainest, darkest shawl, you slip out the back of your townhouse. The streets are emptier than usual. The flickering gas lamps, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to hide unseen watchers. The air is cold and heavy with the promise of rain. You keep your head down, your steps quick and quiet on the cobblestones, every sound making you jump. When you reach the cooperage, you find the main door barred. A sliver of light escapes from a side door leading to the workshop. You hesitate for only a moment before knocking softly. A specific rhythm you somehow knew you were meant to use. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. The door creaks open, and a man you recognize, a silversmith whose shop is 2 streets from yours, peers out, his face etched with worry. He sees you, nods grimly, and steps aside to let you in. The air inside is thick, with the scent of pine sawdust, hot wax, and the collective, anxious sweat of 24 people crammed into a space meant for half that number. Barrels and unfinished staves are pushed against the walls, creating a makeshift circular clearing. In the center, a dozen candles on a crate cast a warm, flickering glow on the assembled faces. You see them all. A baker, his hands still dusted with flour. The wife of a prominent lawyer, her fine silk dress looking starkly out of place. Old men with rheumy eyes who likely remember the last war with the French, and young apprentices who look barely old enough to shave. And across the small room, you see Thomas. He catches your eye and gives you a small, sad nod, a look that says, "I knew you would come." "I'm sorry it has come to this." A man you don't recognize, a printer by the look of his ink-stained fingers, steps forward into the candlelight. His voice is not loud, but it carries a weight that commands silence. "Friends, neighbors, we gather not in defiance of God, but to appeal to Him. We have been pushed, and we have been patient. We have petitioned, and we have been ignored. Now we are told an army comes to enforce a tyrant's will upon us. We are told to bow, but we are not a people who bow easily." A low murmur of agreement ripples through the room. "And so we pray," he continues, his voice gaining strength. "We pray for guidance. We pray for the strength to face what is to come. We pray for the protection of our homes, our families. And yes," he says, his eyes sweeping over the group, meeting yours for a beat, "we pray for victory, for a future where we are masters in our own house. Let us pray." Heads bow. The room falls into a heavy, expectant silence, broken only by the soft, desperate whispers of prayer. You don't close your eyes. You watch the faces in the candlelight, twisted in hope and fear. These aren't the loud, drunken radicals from the taverns. These are your neighbors, your customers. People whose livelihoods, like yours, are tied to the steady, predictable rhythms of commerce and peace. And yet, here they are, risking everything. For the first time, the conflict ceases to be an abstraction of taxes and principles. It becomes intensely personal. You see the baker's wife weeping silently into her hands, and you think of your own empty house. You see the determined set of a young man's jaw, and you feel a terrifying echo of your own adventurous, defiant spirit. The gravity of it all settles on you, the physical weight in your chest. They are praying for a war they cannot possibly win, and your logical mind screams at the futility of it. It is then that the sound begins. Faint at first, a distant, frantic ringing. A fire bell, perhaps? But it's not the steady, rhythmic toll of a drill. It's panicked, desperate. Then comes another sound, the one you now dread, the one that has haunted your thoughts since dawn, the furious, pounding gallop of a horse on stone, coming closer, closer, a sound of pure emergency. The prayers falter, heads lift, eyes dart toward the door. The printer tries to restore calm, raising a hand. Brothers, sisters, do not be. His words are cut off as the workshop door is thrown open with a crash. A young man, not much older than an apprentice, stumbles in, his face pale and slick with sweat. "They're here," he gasps, his chest heaving. "A rider in the square. He came from the south." Quote, "The dam of polite fear breaks. The room erupts. The quiet, desperate hope shatters into 1,000 pieces of raw panic. The baker's wife lets out a sharp cry. Men start shouting over one another, pushing toward the door, their clandestine solemnity forgotten. The chaos you feared is no longer a whisper. It is a roar, and it is here. You are swept along with the crowd as they spill out of the cooperage and into the street, running toward the town square. The scene is one of utter pandemonium. Torches have been lit, casting a wild, dancing light on a scene from a nightmare. In the center of the square, a lathered horse, its flanks trembling and heaving, stands with its head hung low. Its rider, a gaunt figure caked in mud and exhaustion, is slumped against the public fountain, surrounded by a frantic crush of people. He's shouting, his voice hoarse and cracking. "Saw them myself, off the Cape, a fleet, bigger than anything I've ever seen. They're landing troops at Chester, regulars, thousands of them. They mean to march on the city." Quote, "Panic becomes a living creature, a beast that consumes the crowd. People scatter in every direction, screaming, their faces masks of terror. Some run for their homes, to bar their doors and gather their children. Others, the men from the prayer meeting, cluster together, their faces grim, shouting about the militia and sounding the alarm. The fragile peace of Philadelphia has been torn asunder, and in the midst of this maelstrom, you see him. Standing near the edge of the square, a tall figure in the uniform of the local cavalry, is John Dickinson. He isn't panicking, he isn't shouting, he is watching. His expression, to any casual observer, might look supportive, concerned. He places a calming hand on one man's shoulder, directs another toward the armory with a steady voice. He is the image of a soldier taking control. But you see something else. As your eyes meet his across the churning sea of bodies, you see a flicker of something in his gaze that is not concern. It is exhilaration. There is a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips as he watches the city you love descend into chaos. It's the look of a man who has been waiting for this, who thrives on the very turmoil that is tearing your world apart. He is the opposite of you. Where you see the ruin of your life's work, the end of stability, he sees opportunity. He sees the start of a grand, terrible game. The friendly cavalryman, the supportive officer. It's a facade. In that moment, you know with a cold, sinking certainty that this man is not a savior. He is a predator, and this chaos is his hunting ground. The rider's warning has arrived, and with it, the warrior cousin Thomas foretold. And standing right there, orchestrating the response with a terrifying hidden glee, is the man who will surely be your enemy. The world dissolves into a churning vortex of torchlight and terror. Your feet feel rooted to the cobblestones, your gaze locked on John Dickinson. The chaos is a symphony, and he, its conductor. He moves with a calm, predatory grace, his friendly words a mask for the chilling delight in his eyes. This is not the face of a man trying to save a city. It is the face of a man watching his plans come to fruition. A wave of nausea washes over you, colder and more sickening than the night air. The war isn't just coming. For some, it is already a victory. You are jostled from your trance as someone grabs your arm. It's Thomas, his face a pale oval in the flickering light. "Sheba, we must go. It's not safe here. The watch will be out in force, and they'll be looking for anyone from the meeting." Quote. His voice cuts through the roaring in your ears. He's right. To be found here, in the heart of the panic, so soon after leaving the clandestine prayer service would be damning. You let him pull you away from the square, down a narrow, refuse-strewn alley you know as a shortcut. The sounds of screaming and the frantic tolling of the bell fade behind you, replaced by the rasp of your own breathing and the frantic pounding of your heart. You don't speak until you reach the familiar, shadowed lane behind your shop. "Did you see him?" You ask, your voice a harsh whisper. "Dickinson?" Thomas stops, turning to you in the gloom. "I saw him. Doing his duty, I suppose, organizing the militia." "No," you say, shaking your head. The image of his faint smile burned into your mind. It was more than that. He was enjoying it, thriving on it. You sound mad, you realize, but the certainty is a lead weight in your gut. He is not what he seems, Thomas. Your cousin looks at you, his brow furrowed with a mixture of concern for your estate and a willingness to believe you. "There are many men who are not what they seem these days," he says grimly. "Be careful, Sheba. The world has become a place of masks. Get inside. Bar your door." He squeezes your arm once more, a fleeting moment of familial warmth in the cold terror of the night, before melting back into the shadows. The days that follow are a suffocating blend of dread and forced routine. The writer's warning proves true. General Howe's fleet is real, and the British Army is ashore, a menacing presence just a day's march away. Philadelphia transforms. The city doesn't sleep. It waits, breathing in shallow, fearful gasps. Militiamen drill in the public squares, their faces a mixture of bravado and stark fear. The price of flour and salted meat doubles overnight. Loyalists, once vocal in their convictions, now speak in hushed tones, or pack their belongings onto wagons, their faces tight with resentment and fear of their neighbors. The line between patriot and Tory is no longer a matter of opinion. It is a chasm, and it runs straight through your own family. The proof of this arrives a week later, in the form of your uncle, Silas Scott, your father's older brother, a man who built his fortune on privileged trade agreements with London merchants. He arrives at your shop like a galleon in full sail. He is a large man, fond of fine waistcoats and the sound of his own voice, and he views your modest but independent success with a mixture of pride and paternalistic condescension. "Bathsheba, my dear," he booms, his presence filling your small, quiet shop and making the delicate porcelain teacups on your shelves seem to tremble. "A terrible state of affairs. Simply terrible. I trust you are keeping your head down and your opinions to yourself." Quote. You force a polite smile, the one you reserve for difficult customers. "Uncle Silas, it is good to see you well. Tea?" "No time, no time," he waves a dismissive hand. "I've come to ensure you are not falling in with the wrong sort. This talk of rebellion is a fever pitched by scoundrels and debtors. It will be the ruin of us all, the ruin of this family's good name." His eyes narrow, and you know what's coming next. "I hear that fisherman cousin of yours, Payne, has been seen in the company of rabble-rousers, spouting nonsense from that seditious little pamphlet of his." "Thomas is a good man," you reply, your voice cooler than you intend. The bluntness you usually suppress begins to prickle at the edges of your carefully constructed politeness. "Good men do not advocate for treason," he snaps, his face reddening. "This is madness. To turn our backs on the king, on the empire that protects us and makes our commerce possible, it is suicide. I have built a life on order, on the rule of law. These men offer nothing but chaos." Quote. He speaks of chaos, but all you can see is John Dickinson's face, relishing it. You wonder if your uncle's precious order is just a different kind of cage. You say nothing, merely arranging a stack of ledgers on your counter. Your silence seems to agitate him more. "I am having a family dinner on Sunday," he announces, his tone leaving no room for refusal. A chance to speak some sense into the more impressionable members of this family. Young Thomas will be there, and so will you. We will put this foolishness to rest. He pats your hand, a gesture that is meant to be comforting but feels like a brand. You are a sensible girl, Bathsheba, a merchant. You understand the value of stability. Do not disappoint me. Sunday arrives with a heavy, overcast sky that perfectly matches your mood. Your uncle's house in Society Hill is a monument to his loyalist sentiments. The furniture is heavy, dark English oak. The portraits on the walls are of stern-faced ancestors who look down with judgmental eyes. The air itself feels thick, with loyalty to a distant crown. Thomas is already there when you arrive, standing awkwardly by the fireplace, looking as out of place as a seagull in a parlor. He gives you a grateful look as you enter. The dinner is a masterclass in tension. Your aunt tries to steer the conversation toward benign topics, the weather, a neighbor's gout, but Silas will not be deterred. With every course, he steers the conversation back to the crisis, his words aimed squarely at Thomas. A mob of ill-equipped farmers against the most professional army on earth. Silas scoffs, carving a slice of roast beef with surgical aggression. It's a fantasy. A bloody, short-lived one. And for what? So men like Adams and Hancock can line their own pockets? They cry tyranny, while they incite the very chaos that will destroy the honest tradesman. Quote, "Perhaps the honest tradesman is tired of having his pockets picked by a parliament 3,000 miles away," Thomas says quietly, his tact holding firm, though you see the tightness in his jaw. "Perhaps it is not about money, but about the principle that we should govern ourselves." Quote, "Principle?" Silas lets out a short, barking laugh. "You cannot eat principle, boy. You cannot clothe your children in it. What you can do is hang for it." The argument escalates, the polite veneer cracking with each verbal volley. Your aunt looks as though she might burst into tears. You sit in silence, a spectator at the slow, painful dismemberment of your own family. Every argument resonates in a different part of your soul. Silas's words about stability and the ruin of trade strike a chord with the merchant in you. You have worked your entire life to build something, and this conflict threatens to sweep it all away. You want the predictable rhythm of ships arriving in the harbor, of accounts being settled, of a world that makes sense. But then Thomas speaks of liberty, of a man's right to be master of his own fate. And the adventurous heart you've so often suppressed beats faster. It's the same feeling you had in the cooper's workshop. The terrifying, thrilling pull of being part of something larger than yourself, the birth of a new world. To remain neutral, you realize, is not to be safe. It is to be paralyzed, to be a ship with no rudder in a gathering storm, waiting to be dashed against the rocks of one side or the other. Finally, the breaking point comes. "I will not have a traitor in this family," Silas declares, slamming his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. "You will renounce these dangerous ideas, Thomas, or you will no longer be welcome under my roof, or associated with my name." Quote, Thomas pushes his chair back and stands, his face pale but his eyes resolute. "I cannot renounce what I believe to be true, Uncle. I am sorry it causes you such distress, but my conscience is my own." Quote, "Then you have no place here!" Silas bellows, his face purple. He turns his furious gaze on you. "And you, Bathsheba, you must choose. Will you stand with your family, with order and loyalty, or will you cast your lot with this pamphleteer?" Quote, the room falls silent. Every eye is on you. This is it. The line you have been trying to walk has crumbled away. To side with your uncle is to endorse the world as it is, to embrace the cold comfort of submission. To side with Thomas is to step into the unknown, to embrace the chaos your logical mind fears but your heart is drawn to. You think of the rider in the night, the fear in your neighbor's eyes, and the chilling satisfaction on John Dickinson's face. You rise slowly, your hands trembling slightly. You look not at your uncle, but at your cousin. "Thomas," you say, your voice clear and steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside you. "It is getting late. Allow me to walk with you." A gasp escapes your aunt. Silas stares at you, his mouth agape, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. You have not made a grand declaration. You have not spouted rhetoric about liberty or tyranny. You have simply made a choice of company. In this divided world, that is enough. Without another word, you turn and walk out of the dining room, Thomas a half step behind you. You don't look back. You can feel your uncle's glare on your back, a heat that severs a bond that has existed your entire life. The door closes behind you, shutting out the world of polished oak and blind loyalty, and you step into the cool, uncertain night. The air feels different. Lighter. Fraught with danger, yes, but also with possibility. As you walk in silence through the dark streets, Thomas finally speaks. his voice thick with emotion. "You did not have to do that." "Yes," you reply, your own voice quiet but firm. "I did." He stops you under the dim glow of a gas lamp a few doors from your shop. "This will not be easy, Sheba. It will get harder. They'll need things. Supplies. Places to meet where the watch won't look. Safe places." He doesn't ask directly. He doesn't need to. His tactful nature is to test the waters, not to command. He is asking what your choice in that dining room truly meant. You look at your shop, your home, your sanctuary of order and ledgers. You think of the large, dry cellar beneath it, full of empty crates and forgotten shelves. A perfect place to hide things. Or people. The merchant in you screams in protest. It is a risk beyond measure. But the woman who walked out of her uncle's house knows she has already crossed a line. There is no going back. "The cellar door is in the alley," you say softly, not looking at him. "The lock is old." A long moment of silence hangs between you. Then Thomas's hand briefly covers yours. "I pray we are doing the right thing." "I do too, cousin," you whisper to the empty street. "I truly do." He departs, leaving you alone. You stand there for a long time, looking at the dark windows of your home. It no longer feels like just a place of business. It has become something else. A liability. A secret. A front in a war that is no longer coming, but is already here, claiming its first casualties in the drawing rooms and dining halls of a city, and a family, tearing itself apart. You enter your house, the click of the lock echoing in the sudden, profound silence. The familiar scent of cinnamon and dried lavender from your potpourri bowls does little to calm the frantic beating of your heart. Your home, once a bastion of predictable comfort, now feels like a conspirator. Every shadow seems to hold a secret. Every creak of the floorboard sounds like a footstep. You climb the stairs to your rooms, but you do not sleep. Instead, you sit in the dark by your window, watching the street below, seeing it not as a merchant assessing foot traffic, but as a sentry on watch. You have chosen a side, and the quiet, orderly world of Bathsheba Scott, merchant, has ceased to exist. In its place is a terrifying, uncertain landscape you must now learn to navigate. The city in the following weeks is a place of whispers and sideways glances. The grand pronouncements of politicians in the State House feel distant and disconnected from the reality in the streets. The real revolution, you begin to see, is not happening in ink on parchment, but in the small, defiant acts of ordinary people. You see it when the butcher's wife forgets to charge a militiaman's wife for a pound of sausage. You see it in the chalk symbol, a broken key, that appears on a lamp-post one morning and is gone by noon, a signal for a meeting you know nothing about but whose purpose you can feel. You see it in the way a group of dock workers humming Yankee Doodle, once an insult, now a defiant anthem, fall silent, and disperse the moment a pair of redcoats round the corner. These are not the grand, heroic gestures of storybooks. They are small, quiet, and intensely dangerous. They are the threads of a net being woven in the shadows, a net of shared risk and desperate hope. And now, you are one of those threads. One night, a week after the disastrous dinner, there is a soft, rhythmic tapping on your back door. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. The code from the cooperage. Your blood runs cold. You take a sputtering candle and make your way down, your hand trembling as you unlatch the door. It is Thomas, his silhouette stark against the sliver of moon. He isn't alone. Behind him, 2 young men struggle with a heavy, long crate. "Sheba," he whispers, his voice strained. "Forgive me, there was nowhere else." You don't ask what's in it. You don't want to know. You simply nod, stepping aside and holding the candle high. "The cellar," you say, your own voice a ghost of its usual self. The 3 men wrestle the crate down the narrow, steep steps into the damp, earthy-smelling dark below. The sound of it scraping against the stone walls sets your teeth on edge. It feels like they are dragging a coffin into the heart of your home. They place it behind a stack of empty wine barrels in the deepest, darkest corner. "We'll be back for it before the week is out," Thomas promises, his face pale and grim in the flickering light. He looks at you, his eyes full of a sorrow and a gratitude so profound it makes your throat ache. "You are a brave woman, cousin." "I am a terrified one," you whisper back, "and it is the most honest thing you have said in months." He nods, understanding completely. After they leave, you lock the door and lean against it, your knees weak. Down below, hidden in the foundation of your life, lies an act of pure treason. Muskets? Banned pamphlets? Gunpowder? It doesn't matter. It is a secret that, if discovered, would be your end. Your adventurous spirit had craved the unknown, but this feels different. This is a cold, hard knot of fear in your stomach that does not go away. A few nights later, unable to endure the oppressive silence of your house, you slip out, needing the cold air to clear your head. You tell yourself you are just going for a walk, but you know you are looking for more signs, for reassurance that you are not alone in this madness. You walk toward the river, sticking to the shadows. Near the wharves, in a narrow alley between a warehouse and a tannery, you see it. A flicker of a hooded lantern. You press yourself into a recessed doorway, your heart pounding. 3 figures are huddled together. One is the printer whose ink-stained fingers you remember from the prayer meeting. Another is a man you recognize as a ship's carpenter. The third is a woman, her face obscured by a deep hood, but her bearing is regal. The printer passes a small, tightly rolled paper to the carpenter, who secrets it away inside his coat. "The fleet's movements," the printer murmurs. "Get it to the general's man in Chester. Godspeed." The carpenter nods and melts away into the darkness of the docks. The woman hands the printer a small, heavy pouch that clinks with the sound of coin. "For the next printing," she says, her voice low and clear. "Courage, my friend." Quote, she turns to leave, and for a fleeting second, the lantern light catches her profile. You stifle a gasp. It is the wife of the prominent lawyer, the woman whose silk dress had looked so out of place at the cooperage. Here she is, in a foul-smelling alley, funding sedition. You watch them disperse, 3 separate people becoming part of the city's anonymous darkness once more. These are the sinews of the war, you realize. Not the shouting men in uniform, but the quiet exchanges in dark alleys, the secret cargo in a merchant's cellar, the courage of people risking everything. A strange sense of calm settles over you. You are part of this now. The fear is still there, a cold companion, but it is joined by a sense of purpose. You turn to head home, your path taking you through a small, deserted square near the Christ Church burial ground. The air is still and silent, too silent. Then you hear it, the rhythmic clopping of hooves on stone. Not the frantic gallop of a messenger, but the slow, deliberate, menacing sound of a patrol. Before you can retreat into an alley, they are there, rounding the corner into the square. 4 riders, their dark uniforms and plumed hats, making them look like specters of judgment in the moonlight. At their head, sitting straight and imperious on a magnificent black horse, is John Dickinson. Your blood turns to ice. There is nowhere to run. To do so would be an admission of guilt. You force yourself to stand still, to adopt the posture of a citizen with nothing to hide, clutching your shawl around you as if merely caught out in the evening chill. They rein in their horses, forming a loose semicircle that effectively traps you. The horses snort, their breath misting in the cold air. The silence stretches thick and heavy. Dickinson's gaze sweeps over you, his eyes shadowed by the brim of his hat. "Mrs. Scott," he says. His voice is smooth, friendly, but it carries across the empty square with chilling clarity. "A respectable merchant, out enjoying the night air? It is a dangerous time for solitary walks." Quote, "Captain Dickinson," you reply, willing your voice to remain level. You execute a small, polite curtsy. "I was restless. A long day with the ledgers, I'm afraid. Sometimes the air helps." Your bluntness, you hope, sounds artless and truthful. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Those eyes are sharp, analytical, missing nothing. They are the eyes of a hunter. "Ah, yes, the ledgers. A world of order and balance. Something we are all fighting to preserve, are we not?" He lets the question hang in the air. Behind him, one of his men dismounts and roughly shoves a young boy, no older than 15, against the cold stone wall of the burial ground. The boy whimpers as the cavalryman begins to search him. "What is this?" you ask, unable to stop yourself. The boy looks terrified, his face streaked with grime and tears. "Routine, Mrs. Scott," Dickinson says, his gaze never leaving yours. "We have reason to believe certain inflammatory materials are being passed through this part of the city. We are simply ensuring the peace." As he speaks, his man pulls a folded paper from the boy's boot. He hands it up to Dickinson. Dickinson unrolls it, his eyes scanning the contents in the moonlight. The faint smile on his lips returns, cold and triumphant. As I suspected. He looks from the paper to you, a spark of something sharp and knowing in his gaze. It seems loyalty is in short supply these days. A pity. It can cost a person everything. Quote, the boy begins to sob openly now. I didn't know what it was, sir. I swear. A man just gave me a shilling to run it to the docks. Quote, Dickinson ignores him, his entire focus on you. It's a performance, and you are his intended audience. He is showing you what happens to messengers. He is showing you what happens to those who choose the wrong side. The personal cost of war is no longer an abstract concept. It is the sound of a boy weeping in terror a few feet away from you. I heard about the disagreement at your uncle's dinner, Dickinson says softly, his voice a conspiratorial murmur. Silas is a good man, a loyal man. He worries for you. The air leaves your lungs. He knows, of course he knows. His network of spies and informants reaches into the private dining rooms of the city. This isn't a random encounter. He was looking for you. My family's affairs are my own, Captain, you managed to say, a hint of steel entering your voice. Indeed. He folds the paper carefully and tucks it into his coat. But in times like these, nothing is truly one's own. Not family, not business, not even a cellar, I imagine. He lets the word hang in the air for a terrifying moment, and you feel the solid ground beneath you fall away. You cannot know. It's a guess, a bluff, a masterful, cruel shot in the dark. He gives the signal to his men. The cavalryman shoves the boy to the ground and remounts. They are leaving. Dickinson turns his horse but pauses, looking back at you over his shoulder. Go home, Mrs. Scott, he says, his friendly tone more menacing than any shout. Bar your door. The world is a complicated place for a woman alone. It would be a tragedy for such a promising enterprise as yours to be liquidated. Quote, he spurs his horse, and the patrol moves on, their hoofbeats echoing down the street before fading into silence. You are left alone in the square with the sound of the boy's quiet, desperate sobs. You don't move for a long time. The night air feels heavy, suffocating. The confrontation has stripped you bare. The stakes are no longer about principle or the future of a nation. They are about the crate in your cellar. They are about the weeping boy. They are about the cold, intelligent eyes of John Dickinson, who saw straight through your merchant's facade and into the terrified, defiant heart of a rebel. You finally understand this is not a game, and you are already in far deeper than you ever imagined. You retreat into your house, but the heavy oak of your door offers no sanctuary. The silence it shuts in is worse than the sounds it shuts out. Dickinson's final words, not even a cellar, I imagine, echo in the hollow space where your confidence used to reside. He knows, or he suspects enough that it makes no difference. Every shadow that flickers from your candle seems to lengthen into the shape of a gallows. The weight of the crate below feels like a physical pressure on your chest, making it hard to breathe. The house is no longer a home. It is a trap, baited with your life's work and set to spring. You don't sleep. You sit by the window, the woolen shawl clutched around you for a warmth it cannot provide, and you watch. You watch as the pre-dawn light begins to dilute the ink of the night sky, revealing a city tense and gray. The usual morning sounds are absent. There is no clatter of the milk cart, no baker's boy calling out his wares. There is only a held breath, a city-wide suspension of life, waiting for the exhale of violence. It comes not as a shout, but as a deep, resonant boom that vibrates through the floorboards and rattles the glass in your window. It is a sound from a different world, the voice of a monster you have only read about. It comes from the south, from the direction of the river. Before the echo has faded, another follows, and then another. The waiting is over. The prayer bells of Christ Church begin to peal, not with their Sunday summons, but with a frantic, desperate clangor, the sound of alarm you heard once before, now multiplied, a symphony of pure panic. The street below erupts. Doors are thrown open. People spill out, their faces white masks of terror, looking south toward the sound. A woman drops a basket of laundry, the white sheets scattering on the dirty cobblestones like fallen doves. The sound of running feet becomes a constant, frantic drumbeat. From the direction of the State House, you hear the sharp, disciplined tattoo of a military drum, and the shouted commands of officers trying to impose order on chaos. The militia, boys you've seen delivering bread and men you've sold tobacco to, are scrambling to form ranks, their faces a mixture of youthful bravado and abject fear. You are frozen at the window, a spectator to the end of your world. Then, a high-pitched whistle cuts through the din, followed by a deafening crash from the next street over. A geyser of brick dust and splintered wood erupts from the roof of the haberdashery. A woman screams, a raw, piercing sound of agony. This is not a battle in a distant field. This is here. This is happening to your street, to your neighbors. Your blunt, pragmatic nature takes over, shoving the paralysis aside. This is real. The crate in your cellar is real. Your association with Thomas is real. If the city falls, if soldiers go door to door, you are lost. Motivated by the raw terror of Dickinson's threat, you move. You pull a heavy armoire away from the wall, revealing the small, concealed door to your private study, a room with no windows, where you keep your most sensitive accounts. It is not much, but it is all you have. You work with a frantic, desperate energy, moving your most valuable ledgers, a small pouch of coin and a box of your mother's letters into the tiny space. If they come, they can take the tea and the fabric. They will not take your history. As you heave the last ledger into the room, another whistling scream tears the air, this one closer. The world explodes. Your house groans like a dying beast. The window on the far side of your living quarters shatters inward, spraying glass across the floor. You are thrown against the wall, the breath knocked from your lungs. The air fills with a thick, acrid dust that chokes you and stings your eyes. For a moment, there is only a high-pitched ringing in your ears. You push yourself up, coughing, your hands and knees scraped raw. Through the haze, you see that a cannonball has torn through the upper floor of the townhouse across the street. But it did more than that. A wisp of black smoke curls from the ragged hole, followed by the hungry orange flicker of a flame. Fire. The one threat that every soul in this city of wood and tar paper roofs understands and fears above all else. The cannon fire is an act of war, but the fire is an act of annihilation. It does not care about your politics. It will consume patriot and Tory alike. The screams outside change their tone from panic to a more focused, primal terror. Fire! Fire on Mulberry Street! Form a line! Quote, you run downstairs and wrench open your shop door. The scene is pandemonium. The militia is scattered, some returning fire toward the barricades the British are erecting at the end of the street, others looking back at the new, greater threat to their homes. Smoke is already pouring from the townhouse, thick and black. Sparks, carried on the wind, are landing on the dry shingles of the neighboring roofs. On your roof, your heart seizes. Everything you have, everything your father and his father built, is in this building. The thought of it turning to ash fuels a surge of adrenaline that burns away your remaining fear. You grab the 2 heavy water buckets you keep by the door for cleaning and run toward the public well in the middle of the street, joining a frantic, disorganized crowd of your neighbors. The line is a mess of shouting and shoving. No one is in charge. It is then that you see him, his face streaked with soot, his fine waistcoat torn. It is Robert, the portly loyalist from the market, the man who called revolution a madness. His own import shop, full of fine china and spirits, is 2 doors down from the blaze. He is trying to organize a line, but his voice is lost in the din. Form a line to the well! He bellows, his face a mask of desperation. Pass the buckets hand to hand, for God's sake, move! Quote, you shove your way toward him, buckets in hand. His eyes meet yours, and for a second you see a flicker of recognition, a memory of your opposing arguments in a world that no longer exists. There is no time for politics now. There is only the fire. You! With the buckets! He shouts, pointing at you not as a political opponent, but as an able-bodied person. Get in line, we need to move faster. Quote, you don't hesitate. You fall into the line, a human chain of desperation snaking from the well to the burning house. You find yourself standing between a young apprentice, his face a grimace of effort, and Robert himself. The first bucket, heavy and sloshing, is passed into your hands. You pivot, your muscles straining, and pass it to Robert, who heaves it on to the next person. Another bucket comes, and then another. It is grueling, back-breaking work. Your polite manners are gone. replaced by the grim efficiency of survival. Your adventurous spirit finds its purchase not on a ship to a new port, but on a patch of cobblestone, fighting for your life. The heat from the blaze is intense, a physical wall you can feel on your face. The smoke is a choking blanket. You cough, your lungs burning, but you do not stop. You look down the line. You see the baker's wife, her face grimly determined. You see a freedman who works the docks, his powerful arms working in perfect rhythm. And you see Robert, the staunch loyalist, his face red with effort, working side by side with a man wearing the armband of the Patriot militia. The uniforms and the politics have vanished, burned away by the greater common enemy. They are no longer Whig and Tory, they are neighbors. Faster! Robert grunts, his voice hoarse. He glances at you, his eyes red-rimmed from the smoke. There is no animosity in his gaze, only a shared bone-deep terror. It's spreading to the roof of the tannery, quote. You look, he's right. The flames are licking at the next building, threatening to turn the entire block into an inferno. A wave of despair washes over the line. The task is too great. The few buckets of water they can manage feel like spitting into a furnace. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the chaos. A cheer goes up from the end of the street. A fire pumper, a hand-carted engine belonging to one of the city's volunteer companies, is being wheeled frantically into position by a dozen men. And at their head, his face a smudge of soot and determination, is your cousin Thomas. He sees you in the line, and his eyes widen for a second, but he doesn't pause. He directs his men with a calm authority you've never seen in him. Get the hose into the well. 2 men on the intake. Everyone else on the pumps. Now! The arrival of the pumper injects a fresh dose of hope. Your desperate bucket brigade now has a purpose. To support the engine, to keep the bigger buckets full for the hose's reservoir. The work becomes a steady, grueling rhythm. Your hands are raw, your back aches, and every muscle screams in protest, but you keep moving. You work alongside Robert, a silent, sweat-soaked team, passing bucket after bucket. In the shared language of exhaustion and effort, a truce is formed. You are no longer defending your individual shops. You are defending the street. Hours seem to pass. The cannon fire has lessened, the battle moving to another part of the city. But the fight against the blaze continues. Finally, with a great hiss and a belch of white steam, the main part of the fire begins to die, subdued by the steady stream from the pumper. The flames retreat, leaving behind the blackened, skeletal remains of the townhouse. The immediate danger has passed. The line breaks apart, its members slumping against walls or collapsing onto the wet, ash-strewn cobblestones, their bodies shaking with exhaustion and relief. You lean against the wall of your shop, your chest heaving, your dress is soaked and smeared with soot. Your hands are bleeding. You have never felt so bone-weary in your life. Robert stumbles over and slumps down a few feet from you. He says nothing for a long moment, just stares at the smoldering ruin, his face a mixture of grief for what was lost and profound relief for what was saved. My china, he says finally, his voice a rough croak. All imported from Staffordshire. It must be a melted lump now. He looks at you, and for the first time, you see him not as a pompous loyalist, but as a man mourning his life's work, just as you would have. I'm sorry, Robert, you say, and you mean it. He gives a short, humorless laugh. What does it matter now? An hour ago, I was cursing the rebels for bringing this upon us. Then I saw that cannonball. It doesn't choose sides, does it? He shakes his head slowly. We're all just Philadelphians today, I suppose. You nod, too tired to speak. In the face of total destruction, the bitter divisions that had torn your city and your family apart seemed suddenly, tragically small. The battle for the city may have been lost or won today. You don't even know the outcome. But here, on this smoky, waterlogged street, something else had happened. Amid the terror and the chaos, a fragile, unlikely unity had been forged in the heat of a shared struggle. You look at the exhausted faces around you, friends and former foes alike. You had prayed for victory, and you realize now that victory might not be a grand triumph on a battlefield. Sometimes, it is simply this: surviving the day, together. The smoke is a rapacious ghost, clinging to everything, a foul shroud over the street. It stings your eyes and coats the back of your throat with the taste of ash and sorrow. The adrenaline that fueled your frantic work has drained away. leaving a hollow ache in your muscles and a profound, trembling weariness in your bones. You look at Robert, his fine waistcoat now a filthy rag, his face a mask of grimy despair, and see not a Tory but a mirror of your own exhaustion. All around you, the street is a testament to the morning's violence, a carpet of black-streaked water, shattered roof tiles, and the glittering debris of 100 broken windows. The fragile quiet of exhaustion is broken by a woman's cry, a sound so raw and full of agony it seems to tear the air. You push yourself away from the wall, your gaze drawn toward the skeletal ruin of the haberdasher's home. 2 men from the fire company, their faces grim, emerge from the smoking doorway carrying a long, canvas-wrapped bundle. It sags in the middle. It is horribly, unmistakably human. A small woman, who you recognize as the haberdasher's wife, stumbles toward them and collapses to her knees on the wet cobblestones, her wail rising into the smoky sky. "No, no, not Henry. Please, God, no." You feel the ground tilt beneath you. Henry Miller. A quiet man who sold you ribbons just last week. A man who always had a gentle joke about the weather. You had seen him an hour before the cannon fire, sweeping the stoop in front of his shop. Now he is a bundle of canvas, a casualty not in a battle line but in his own home. The war, which had been a thing of taxes and principles, of shouting men and hidden crates, has just become the smell of burned hair and the sound of a widow's grief. Your mind, the merchant's mind that calculates cost and profit, does a brutal, involuntary accounting. The cost of this conflict is one haberdasher, one home, one widow's heart, shattered beyond repair. And the profit? You can see none. Thomas appears at your side, his face smudged with soot, his poet's eyes filled with a horror that mirrors your own. He places a hand on your arm, a gesture of comfort that feels utterly inadequate. "Sheba," he begins, his voice rough, "are you harmed?" You shake your head, unable to look away from the weeping woman. "He's dead, Thomas," you say, your voice flat, blunt. "Henry Miller. He sold you the buttons for your good coat last winter. Do you remember?" Thomas looks over at the tragic scene, his jaw tightening. "I remember." Quote, "Was it worth it?" you ask, the question tearing from you sharp and bitter. You turn to face him, the polite mask you have worn for a lifetime completely gone. This, him. Was his life worth the principle? Was the principle worth his wife's world ending on a dirty street? Tell me, cousin, you're the one who believes in this. Make it make sense. He flinches as if you had struck him. He has no answer. His gaze falls from yours, and in his silence you find a terrible shared understanding. The rousing words of pamphlets and the solemn prayers in hidden rooms are easy. This is hard. This is the true price, and it is a currency of blood and grief. "I don't know," he finally whispers, his own conviction shaken by the brutal reality before him. "I only know that to bow, to accept the boot on our necks forever, that has a price too. A different kind of death." But his words feel like smoke dissolving into the air. You are not thinking of the future, of a new nation, or the rights of man. You are thinking of Henry Miller, who will have no future at all. The adventurous spirit that led you to this path feels like a foolish, childish whim. You were drawn to the thrill of the unknown, and now you have found it. It is the sound of a woman crying for her dead husband. As if summoned by the depths of despair, small moments of grace begin to flicker in the gloom. The baker's wife, her own face streaked with tears, goes to the widow. She doesn't speak. She simply kneels beside her in the muck and wraps her arms around her shaking shoulders, a silent, powerful promise that she is not alone. From across the street, a man whose print shop was damaged by the blast emerges with 2 wooden chairs, setting them down so the grieving woman and her comforter do not have to kneel on the cold stones. You watch these small acts of compassion, these tiny sparks of light, in the overwhelming dark. They do not fix what is broken. They do not bring Henry back. But they are a refusal to surrender completely to the chaos. They are a stubborn human insistence on decency in the face of destruction. Your gaze drifts back to Robert. He is still sitting, staring into the middle distance. A young boy, Henry's apprentice, wanders out of the crowd, his face blank with shock, shivering uncontrollably in his thin shirt. Without a word, Robert struggles to his feet, walks over to the boy, and wraps his own soot-stained, expensive wool coat around the child's narrow shoulders. He, the staunch loyalist, comforting the employee of a man likely sympathetic to the patriot cause. The fire burned away their labels, leaving only a man and a boy, a shared humanity. Something inside you shifts. The cold knot of despair in your stomach does not vanish, but it loosens its grip. Thomas was wrong. The answer isn't in grand principles or justifications for war. It's here. It's in these moments. The gain is not a future victory. The gain is the baker's wife's embrace, the printer's chairs, Robert's coat. It is the simple, profound refusal to let your neighbor suffer alone. Motivated by a new, sober sense of purpose, you turn and walk back into your own shop. The familiar scent of spices and fabrics feels alien after the acrid smoke outside. A shard of glass from your broken window crunches under your boot. You ignore it. You walk past the fine silks and imported teas, your usual pride in your wares feeling hollow and frivolous. You go instead to a chest where you keep your bolts of sturdy, practical wool and flannel, the kind you sell for winter cloaks and work shirts. You pull out a heavy bolt of dark gray wool, its weight a comfort in your aching arms. You grab a cutting shears from the counter. You return to the street, a merchant with her goods, but your intention is not commerce. You find the widow's sister who has just arrived, and press the bolt of wool into her arms. For mourning clothes, you say softly, and for blankets. Take what you need. The woman stares at you, her eyes wide with incomprehension before they fill with grateful tears. You then approach Robert, who has returned to his slumped position against the wall. You unroll a length of the wool, and, with the shears, cut a large, generous piece, enough for a heavy shawl or a small blanket. You fold it and hold it out to him. He looks up at you, confused. What is this? Quote, "Your coat," you say simply, nodding toward the apprentice who is still huddled in it. "You'll be cold tonight." He stares at the offered cloth, then at you. The guarded, suspicious look of a political opponent is gone, replaced by a weary, grudging respect. He reaches out and takes the wool, his calloused fingers brushing yours. "Thank you, Bathsheba," he murmurs, his voice thick. He clears his throat. "Why shop? The windows are gone. The door is splintered. It's not secure. Yours?" "The front window is broken. The frame is damaged," you reply. "I have tools," he says, not quite looking at you. "And some spare timber. When things are quieter, I can help you board it up, to keep the looters out." Quote, "I would be grateful, Robert," you say. "It is a treaty, signed not in ink but in a shared understanding of loss and the practical necessities of survival. A few weeks ago, you were on opposite sides of a brewing war. Now, you are two merchants with broken windows, offering each other wool and wood, a small, fragile alliance against the chaos that has consumed your world. Later, as the sun begins to set, casting long, mournful shadows down the wounded street, you retreat into the silence of your house. The broken window lets in the chill evening air and the lingering scent of smoke. You light a single candle and make your way down to the cellar. You stand before the hidden crate, the symbol of your treason. It no longer feels like an abstract act of defiance. It feels heavy, dense with the weight of Henry Miller's death. This crate, and others like it, are what brought the cannons to your street. You rest a hand on the rough wood. The adventurous thrill is gone, burned out of you. The blunt merchant in you can only see the terrible debit in your ledger. But as you stand there in the cold dark, you also remember the warmth of Robert's coat on a shivering boy, the strength in the baker's wife's arms, the shared, grueling work of the bucket line. You see now that there are two wars being fought. There is the grand, terrible war of men like Dickinson, a war of strategy and cannons that destroys lives with cold indifference. And then there is the other war, the small, quiet one fought on the ruined streets, a war to save not a nation, but a neighborhood. A war fought with buckets and blankets and kindness. You question if the first war is worth the cost. You doubt you will ever have an answer. But the second war, you know with a certainty that settles deep in your weary soul that it is a war you must not lose. You blow out the candle and climb the stairs, leaving the crate in the darkness, your resolve no longer fiery and ideological, but quiet, sober, and as solid as the cobblestones beneath your feet. The weeks that follow bleed into one another, a smear of gray days under a slate-gray sky. Winter settles into Philadelphia not as a gentle blanket of snow, but as a raw, biting cold that seeps through the cracks in your boarded-up window and seems to emanate from the very cobblestones. The city is a ghost of itself, haunted by the British presence just beyond its effective reach and the ever-present fear within. This is the new rhythm of your life, a careful dance of survival. Robert, true to his word, helped you nail rough-sawn planks over the shattered window of your shop. You worked together in a strange, silent partnership. The sounds of your hammer and his saw a temporary defiance against the larger silence of a city holding its breath. You are no longer political adversaries. You are simply two people with broken windows, trying to keep the cold out. Commerce has all but ceased. The ships that do brave the blockaded river bring military supplies, not the fine fabrics and spices that are your lifeblood. Your days are spent in quiet, frugal routine. You portion out your dwindling stores of flour and salted fish. You spend long hours in the cold stillness of your shop, not selling, but mending, cleaning, taking inventory of a life that has been put on hold. At night, you read, by a single, precious candle. The sound of Dickinson's patrols a constant, menacing reminder of the danger that sleeps just beneath the surface of your floorboards. The crate in the cellar is a cold, hard presence in your mind. In the bleak silence of these winter weeks, it feels less like an act of rebellion and more like a tombstone you have foolishly invited into your own home. The revolution, it seems, is dying a slow, freezing death. The day of Christ's Mass arrives not with joyous bells and carols, but with a profound and weary quiet. A thin, miserable sleet slicks the streets, keeping everyone indoors. There is no feast at your uncle's house, no family gathering. That world is gone. You spend the day alone, huddled by the hearth, nursing a cup of weak, bitter tea, the last of your personal stock. You think of Henry Miller and his wife, and the cost of it all feels unbearable, a debt that can never be repaid. As dusk falls, swallowing what little light the day had offered, you feel a despair so complete it is almost peaceful. It is over. The great, foolish adventure has failed. Then comes the knock. It's not the rhythmic code you've come to expect, but a frantic, desperate hammering on your back door that makes your heart leap into your throat. You grab the heaviest iron poker from the hearth, your mind racing. It's Dickinson. He's come for you. You creep to the door, your breath held tight in your chest, and whisper through the thick oak, "Who is it?" Quote, "Sheba, for God's sake, let me in!" It's Thomas. You fumble with the latch, your hands clumsy with a mixture of relief and fear, and swing the door open. He stumbles inside, bringing a blast of frigid, wet air with him. He's not just cold and soaked to the bone, there's something else about him. His eyes, usually so calm and thoughtful, are wide and burning with a wild, almost manic light. He is vibrating with an energy that seems utterly alien in the deadened city. "They've done it!" he gasps, leaning against the door as you bolt it behind him. He pulls off his woolen cap, his hair plastered to his head with sleet and sweat. "Sheba, they've done it." "Done what, Thomas?" you ask, your voice sharp with impatience. "Are the British in the city? Has the Congress fled?" "No," he says, and a grin, a real, incredulous, glorious grin, splits his face. "Washington." He crossed the Delaware. Last night, in the storm. He took them completely by surprise. Quote, you stare at him, your blunt realism rising like a shield. "Don't be a fool, that's impossible." His army is a collection of starving boys and old men. The river is full of ice. "That's not news, Thomas. That's a fever dream." "It's true," he insists, grabbing your arms, his grip surprisingly strong. "I spoke to a boatman, one of Glover's men from Marblehead. They rowed them across. Horses, cannons, all of it, in the middle of a blizzard. They fell on the Hessians at Trenton before dawn. They took the entire garrison, 1,000 of them. Captured Sheba. They took the town." Quote, the words are so outlandish, so contrary to the weeks of grim reality, that you cannot process them. It's a desperate rumor, born of desperation itself. You pull away from him, shaking your head. A boatman's tale to get a free drink. Go home and get warm, Thomas, before you catch your death. Quote, he leaves, his face falling at your disbelief, but the wild light in his eyes does not dim. You spend the next 2 days in a state of suspended animation, the seed of his impossible story planted in your mind. You tell yourself it's a lie. But you find yourself lingering by the boarded-up window, listening. The city is still quiet, but it is a different kind of quiet now. It is not the silence of despair, but of anticipation. You hear the rumor whispered at the well, a garbled version of Thomas's tale. You see a flash of a hidden smile between two strangers in the street. Hope, The thing you thought had been extinguished is trying to find the cracks to seep through. Then, 3 days after Christmas, you see it for yourself. You are walking back from the market, clutching a small, precious bag of cornmeal, when you hear a commotion from the direction of High Street. It is not the sound of panic, but a low, growing rumble of something else. Curiosity, sharper than your fear, pulls you toward it. You join a crowd that is gathering along the street, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. And then they come. They are not a conquering army. They are not the pristine, terrifying redcoats or Dickinson's proud cavalry. They are a miserable, defeated-looking column of men marching under the guard of Continental soldiers who look only slightly less starved than their prisoners. But it is their uniforms that make you stop breathing. The towering brass-fronted caps, the blue coats, the clumsy gaiters. You have only seen them in drawings, in the fearful descriptions of pamphlets. They are Hessians, real captured Hessians, the fearsome mercenaries the king had hired, reduced to this shuffling, muddy column of defeat. The crowd is silent at first, simply staring at the impossible sight. These are the monsters they were told would ravage their homes. They look small, cold, frightened. A boy near you, emboldened by their state, yells a taunt. But an old woman beside him shushes him fiercely. "Hush, child," she murmurs, her voice carrying in the quiet. They are men, and they are beaten. A wave of understanding, so powerful it makes you dizzy, washes through you. Thomas was right, it's all true. Washington's starving, broken army, the one everyone believed was finished, had risen from its deathbed and struck a blow so audacious, so utterly unbelievable, that it has changed the world. You look at the captured soldiers, and you see not just a victory, but a possibility. The unshakable might of the British Empire suddenly looks shakable. You turn away from the procession, your heart hammering against your ribs with a feeling you have not felt in months. It is not the reckless thrill of the adventurer, but the calculated, electrifying realization of a merchant who has just seen a market turn. The ledger of this war, so long drenched in the red ink of loss, has just had a massive entry made on the credit side. The cost of Henry Miller's life is still a terrible, gaping wound. But now, for the first time, you can begin to imagine what might be purchased at such a price. Not just a principle, but a future. A real, attainable future. You walk home, but you are not seeing the slush-covered streets or the grim faces. You are seeing John Dickinson's face. You imagine him hearing the news, the smug, friendly mask slipping to reveal the fury of a predator whose prey has just grown teeth. The thought sends a jolt of pure, defiant energy through you. You do not stop in your living quarters. You light a candle and walk directly to the cellar door, your steps sure and steady. You descend into the damp cold, the candlelight pushing back the familiar shadows. You walk to the back, to the corner behind the wine barrels, and you stand before the crate. It no longer looks like a tombstone. It looks like what it is, a box of tools for a job that needs doing. You run your hand over the rough, splintery wood. The fear is still there, a cold knot deep inside you. You know the risk has not lessened. In fact, it has increased. A victory will make the enemy more desperate, more ruthless. Dickinson will be more vigilant than ever. But the despair that has accompanied the fear is gone. It has been burned away by the sight of those captured soldiers, by the renewed hope that now thrums through the city like a second heartbeat. This crate is not a liability. It is a promise. It is your small, secret, terrifying part in the story of Trenton. It is your answer to the cannons and the fire. You think of the small war you had resolved to fight, the war of kindness, of blankets and boarded-up windows. That is still vital. It is the soul of your cause. But you see now that it is not separate from the larger war. It is the foundation upon which it must be built. Washington's men could not have crossed that river without the support of 1,000 small, defiant acts. Of farmers who shared food, of boatmen who risked their lives, of people who kept the flame of rebellion alive through the darkest weeks. You are one of them. The realization settles into you, solid and clear. You are no longer just a merchant caught in the tide. You are a part of the current. You turn and ascend the stairs, leaving the crate to its silent purpose in the dark. You extinguish the candle and go to your writing desk, pulling out a clean sheet of paper. You dip your quill in the ink pot. The familiar scratching sound a comfort. You do not write in your ledger. You write a short, simple note. You fold it carefully and seal it. The next evening you find Thomas mending his nets by the weak light of a lantern near the docks. He looks up as you approach, his expression wary, perhaps expecting another bitter questioning of his ideals. You simply hand him the folded note. He looks at it, then at you, confused. "What is it?" Quote, "It's a list," you say, your voice quiet but firm, carrying clearly in the cold night air, "of every empty warehouse, every abandoned stable, and every deep cellar I know of between here and the floating bridge. Places to move things. Or to hide them. Places for men to shelter from the cold." You meet his gaze, and for the first time in a long time, you let him see past the polite merchant and the blunt survivor to the adventurous heart that beats within. "The war is not over, cousin. It's just beginning. Tell me what you need." Thomas takes the note, his fisherman's hands, so accustomed to the rough texture of rope and net, handling the delicate paper with a kind of reverence. He doesn't need to read it to understand its weight. It is an anchor, a map, a promise. His grateful gaze meets yours, and in it, you see the reflection of a shared, terrifying, and irrevocable future. He nods once, a gesture more profound than any words, before tucking the list deep inside his coat and melting back into the frozen darkness of the wharf. You are left alone with the biting wind and the lapping of icy water against the pilings, a strange sense of peace settling over you. You have chosen your harbor in the storm. The days that follow are a lesson in the architecture of ruin and repair. The hope kindled by the victory at Trenton does not miraculously mend broken buildings or bring back the dead, but it changes the air. It is the difference between the silence of a graveyard and the quiet of a workshop. The sound of cannon fire is replaced by the rhythmic rasp of saws and the steady report of hammers. Your street, a landscape of shared trauma, becomes a commonwealth of shared labor. Robert is there the next morning, as promised, a bag of heavy iron nails in one hand and a saw in the other. His face is still etched with weariness, but the hollow despair has been replaced by a grim pragmatism. You work together, a silent and efficient team. He measures the splintered frame of your shop window while you clear the last of the glass. You hold the rough planks steady as he drives the nails home, the blows echoing in the cold air. There is no talk of politics, of the king or the Congress. You speak a different language now, a lexicon of necessity. "Hand me the gimlet." "Is this board long enough?" "Hold it steady." When the last board is in place, plunging your shop into a dim, cavernous gloom, he steps back to inspect the work. "It will hold," he says. It sounds like a benediction. You retreat into your house, and return with a loaf of hard-saved bread and a small crock of apple butter. You offer it to him without a word. He looks at the offering, then at you, and a flicker of the old world passes through his eyes, the world where a fine merchant like him would never accept such a humble payment. Then he nods, takes the food, and breaks off a piece. You stand there for a moment, on the cold cobblestones, two adversaries sharing a meal amidst the wreckage of your lives, the crude patch on your window, a monument to your fragile truce. This new unspoken treaty extends up and down the street. You see the printer, whose shop front was damaged, receiving help from the tanner, a man you know for a fact had a portrait of the king hanging in his parlor. You see wives sharing portions from a single cooking pot, their children playing together in the rubble, oblivious to the flags their fathers once saluted. The fire and the battle have burned away old allegiances, leaving behind the simple, undeniable reality of your shared address, your shared vulnerability. The funeral for Henry Miller is held 2 days later in the Christchurch burial ground, the same ground where Dickinson's men had terrorized the young boy. The sky is a leaden sheet, and a bitter wind whips through the bare trees. The entire street is there. You stand near the back, your plainest wool shawl pulled tight against the cold. You see Robert, his face solemn, standing beside the apprentice boy still wrapped in his coat. You see the baker's wife, her arm linked with the widow's. You see men who wear the continental buff and blue standing quietly near men you know to be staunch loyalists. Even your uncle, Silas, is there, his face a grim, unreadable mask. He sees you, and his gaze is cold, but he gives a stiff, formal nod of acknowledgement. In the face of death, even he cannot maintain the full heat of his fury. The rector's words are lost to the wind, but it doesn't matter. The sermon is preached in the shared silence, in the collective grief of a community mourning one of its own. This, you realize, is the true cost. Not the broken buildings or the lost trade. It is the empty space where a good man used to be, As the simple wooden coffin is lowered into the frozen earth, you look at the faces around you. They are weary, they are frightened, but they are not broken. The spirit of this place, you see, is not in its politics or its commerce, but in its stubborn, quiet refusal to let one of its own be buried alone. The long, hard road of winter stretches ahead, a gauntlet of scarcity and cold. Your shop remains dark, a cave of hibernating commerce. Your ledgers, when you dare to look at them, are a testament to your ruin. But your purpose has shifted. You are no longer just a merchant. You are a quartermaster in a secret war. One night, Thomas comes again, this time with two men whose faces are gaunt with exhaustion and whose eyes dart nervously at every shadow. They are couriers, carrying dispatches from Washington's winter camp in Morristown. "They just need a warm place to sleep, Sheba," Thomas whispers. "They leave before dawn." Quote, you look at the two strangers, at their worn-out boots and shivering frames, and you see the human machinery of the hope that was born at Trenton. You simply nod. "The old cooperage," you say, recalling the first entry on the list you gave him. "The owner is in Wilmington for the winter. The back door lock is rusted through." Quote, you give them what you have, the rest of the bread from Robert, a heel of cheese, and two of your thickest wool blankets, the same kind you gave to Henry Miller's widow and to Robert. As you hand the blankets to the younger of the two men, his raw, chapped fingers brush yours. He looks you in the eye, and for a second you see the immensity of his gratitude and the crushing weight of his fatigue. "God bless you, ma'am," he murmurs, his voice a hoarse whisper. After they are gone, you stand in the silence of your house and feel the profound shift within you. You are risking everything, your home, your livelihood, your life, for two men whose names you will never know. The blunt merchant in you screams at the folly of it. There is no profit here, no return on this investment. But the woman who stood in the cold at Henry Miller's grave knows that some accounts are not kept in ledgers. The future is a fog, a vast, terrifying unknown. You cannot see the shore, but you can feel the pull of the current you have committed to, and for the first time it feels less like being swept away and more like setting a course. Hope, you learn, is not a victory parade. It is a quiet, stubborn thing that lives in the cracks of a broken world. It is the sound of a hammer in the morning. It is a shared loaf of bread. It is a dry place for a stranger to sleep. You do not know if you will survive this, emotionally or otherwise. You do not know if the grand cause of liberty will triumph, or if you will all end up in the hangman's noose that Dickinson's smile promised. All you know is that the road ahead is long, and the winter is far from over. But as you bank the fire in your hearth, conserving the precious wood, you feel a flicker of its warmth inside you. You have made your choice. You have chosen a side. And though the path is fraught with danger and sorrow, you are, for the first time, certain you are walking in the right direction. The ice on the Delaware breaks with a sound like pistol shots, great groaning cracks that echo through the quiet streets. Spring arrives not as a gentle guest, but as a slow, arduous thawing. The sun, when it appears, is a pale disk in a white sky, offering little warmth but enough light to illuminate the city's deep scars. The blackened skeleton of the haberdashery stands as a constant, silent sermon. The pockmarks from musket balls on brick walls are like a pox that will never fade. But in the small patch of earth behind your house, stubborn green shoots of crocus push through the cold, muddy ground, an absurd and beautiful act of defiance. You find yourself watching them each morning, a merchant assessing a different kind of stock. The fragile truce on your street holds, a new social contract written in ash and sealed with exhaustion. You and Robert now nod when you pass, a brief, weighted acknowledgement of all you have weathered together. The old arguments feel like they belong to a different lifetime, to people you no longer are. One blustery afternoon in early March, he appears at the door of your darkened shop. He is dressed not in his usual finery, but in practical, heavy traveling clothes. "I'm leaving, Bathsheba," he says, not meeting your eye. He looks past you into the gloom of your shop, at the shrouded bolts of fabric and the empty shelves. "For Halifax. There's nothing left for me here." "I'm sorry to hear that, Robert," you say, and the politeness is genuine, layered with a sadness that surprises you. He finally looks at you, his gaze clear of anger, holding only a deep, bottomless weariness. "Are you? I destroyed my business, my friendships, my standing in this city, all for a loyalty the king will never know or reward. And you and your kind have traded order for this. He gestures to the wounded street. For chaos and death, and a future built on nothing but a handful of pamphlets and a few lucky skirmishes. Tell me, what have you won? The blunt question hangs between you, the same question you screamed at Thomas in the hours after the fire. You think of Henry Miller. You think of the terror on the young boy's face as Dickinson's men searched him. You think of the crate of muskets in your cellar, a cold and constant companion. The cost is a mountain. But then you think of the Hessians marching in defeat. You think of the hope in the courier's eyes. You think of the list of safe houses tucked in your cousin's coat. Perhaps, you say slowly, the words finding their own shape in the cold air, we have won the right to build something from the rubble. Something that is our own. He shakes his head, a gesture not of disagreement but of resignation. I pray you know what you are doing. He offers you his hand. You take it. His grip is firm, the hand of a man who, like you, built a life with his own labor. It is not the handshake of friends, but of survivors of the same shipwreck, washed up on different shores. You watch him walk down the street, a man walking away from his home, and you feel a profound sense of loss, not for the world he represents, but for the simple fact that it had to be torn apart. The city is changing in ways more fundamental than boarded-up windows. One afternoon, you see a small crowd gathered near the State House. There is no panic in their posture, no frantic energy. They are clustered around a man standing on a crate, reading from a broadside. You drift closer, your old habit of listening taking over. The words are not about troop movements or new taxes. They are about representation, about the structure of a new government for Pennsylvania, about the rights of citizens and the limits of power. You see faces from the prayer meeting in the cooperage, the printer, the silversmith, the baker's wife. They are not huddled in the shadows now. They are standing in the open, in the pale sunlight, their faces wrapped, not with the fever of rebellion, but with the focused, furrowed brow concentration of people engaged in the difficult work of creation. They are arguing. A cooper insists that the legislature should have only one house, to be closer to the will of the people. A lawyer argues passionately for two, a check against the passions of a mob. You listen, and you understand. This is it. This is the seed. It is not a glorious, unified vision descending from on high. It is this. A noisy, messy, passionate argument in a public square. It is the chaos of the writer's warning being hammered into the shape of a government. It is the answer to Robert's question. This is what you have won. The right to have this argument, out in the open, without fear. The adventurous heart that once yearned for distant ports recognizes this for the greatest adventure of all, the charting of a new country. That night you cannot sleep. You pull out the old ledger, the one that ends on the day of the battle. You run your fingers over the last entries. One bolt, blue ribbon, to H. Miller. The final, mundane transaction with a dead man. The neat columns of figures seem to mock you, a relic from a world of predictable profit and loss. You close the book, the sound final and absolute. You walk to the chest where you keep your blank ledgers, the symbols of future prosperity you once hoarded. You take out a new one, its pages clean and crisp, smelling of fresh paper and possibility. You open it on your desk. The first page is blank, a terrifying and exhilarating void. What is the first entry in the account book of a new world? For a long time, you simply sit, quill in hand. Then, you begin to write. You do not write of shillings and pence. You write names. Henry Miller. Robert Ashton. Thomas Paine. You list the couriers whose names you never knew, simply as two men from Morristown. You list the baker's wife. You list the apprentice boy. It is a ledger of debts and assets of a different kind. A tally of the human cost and the human courage that has brought you to this moment. You are a merchant still, and this is your new accounting. The debits are staggering, written in blood and grief. But the assets, the stubborn hope, the shared sacrifice, the fragile community, are immeasurable. A soft knock at the door, the familiar code, pulls you from your reverie. It is Thomas. He carries no crates, brings no fugitives. He simply holds a slim, stitched pamphlet. He hands it to you. The title, printed in bold, stark type, is The American Crisis. Quote, "He is with the army," Thomas says softly, referring to the other, more famous Thomas Paine, whose pamphlet Common Sense had been the kindling for the revolution. He wrote this in the darkest days, Before the crossing, read the first words. You hold it near the candlelight, your eyes finding the text. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Quote, the words pierce you. You are no summer soldier. You have lived the winter. You have stood by it when all seemed lost. You look up at your cousin, and he sees the understanding in your eyes. It is not over, Sheba, he says, his voice low and serious. The British still hold New York. The army is still ill-equipped. Dickinson is still out there, and he will not forgive a victory that made him look a fool. There will be more battles, more losses, more Henry Millers. I know, you say, and you do. The knowledge is a cold, hard stone in your gut. This is not an ending. The path ahead remains a treacherous fog. But something has changed, he continues, a quiet fire in his eyes. We are no longer just a collection of colonies protesting attacks. We are something else, something new. You look from his earnest face to the new ledger on your desk, its first page a testament to the pain and promise of the past year. You think of the crocus shoots in your garden, pushing their way through the hard, unforgiving earth. They are not a forest. They are not even a flower. They are just a beginning, a seed of a nation taking its first, tentative root in the soil of sacrifice. It is fragile. It may not survive the next winter, but it is there. Yes, you whisper, the word feeling more true and more real than any number you have ever written. We are. The year turns, its pages dog-eared with sorrow and stained with blood. The fierce hope, born from Trenton, does not win the war overnight. The British do not simply vanish. Winter gives way to a long, anxious spring, and then a summer thick with heat and rumor. The grand armies march and countermarch across the landscapes of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Their movements a distant, deadly chess game, whose rules you cannot comprehend. But here in Philadelphia, something else is happening. The war has settled into your bones, becoming a part of the city's daily bread, its daily breath. Your shop remains closed to regular commerce. It has become something else entirely, a node in the city's secret nervous system. A way station, a dead drop, a place of whispers. The crate of muskets is long gone, spirited away one moonless night, replaced by other, more mundane-looking contraband. Sacks of flour that contain hidden dispatches, barrels of salted fish with false bottoms hiding pouches of coin for the cause, bolts of simple wool to be cut into blankets for men whose names you will never know. The blunt merchant in you has learned a new and dangerous arithmetic, one where the greatest profit is a message delivered, and the most valuable asset is a secret kept. You stand by the now-repaired window, its new panes of glass rippling the view of the street. It is late afternoon, and the sun casts long shadows, the same as it ever did. But you see the world through different eyes. You see the gaps in the streetscape where buildings used to be. You see the subtle chalk marks on a wall that signal a meeting. You see the guarded look in the eyes of neighbors who, a year ago, only cared about the price of tea. You have lost your naivete. You have lost friends and family. You have lost the simple, orderly world you once cherished. In its place, you have gained a city. Not the city of maps and commerce, but the real city, the one held together by the sinews of shared risk and fierce, quiet love. As the year draws to a close, a full turn of the season since the rider's frantic warning, you find yourself on the docks. The evening is cold, the air sharp with the scent of salt water and coming frost. You are not here for business. You are here to watch the river, the great gray artery of the continent. A year ago, this river was a barrier, a moat full of ice that a desperate general had to cross. Now it flows freely, a symbol of the fragile, hard-won life that persists. You think of Robert, now in Halifax, a ghost of a life you once knew. You wonder if he looks out at the same cold ocean and thinks of his lost home. You think of your Uncle Silas, locked in his house in Society Hill, a prisoner of his own rigid certainties, his anger a cold fire that offers no warmth. The severing of those ties is an ache that has not faded, a constant reminder of the war's intimate cost. The ledger you started sits on your desk. Its pages are slowly filling, not with accounts of goods sold, but with a different kind of balance sheet. A debit, 2 blankets, for the men from Morristown. An asset, A boatman's rumor of victory, delivered by tea. Pain, a debit, the last of the English tea. An asset, a treaty of bread and apple butter with R. Ashton. It is the ledger of a new economy, one whose currency is courage and whose profit is one more day of defiance, one more sunrise over a city that refuses to die. You carry the weight of 1776 with you. It is the permanent chill in your bones from that winter of fear. It is the echo of Henry Miller's widow's cry, a sound you know will never truly leave you. It is the memory of John Dickinson's smile, a constant reminder that the war is not only fought on battlefields, but in the dark alleys and quiet parlors of this city, a war of whispers and intimidation against which you must constantly be on guard. He is still out there, his power diminished by the shifting tides, but his menace undimmed. You know that to him you are not a citizen, but a loose thread in his tapestry of order, one he still intends to snip. The challenges that lie ahead are a mountain range lost in the clouds, vast and insurmountable, yet as you stand here on the precipice of a new year, you feel not despair, but a quiet, deep-seated hope. It is not the feverish hope of the prayer meeting, nor the wild, incredulous hope of the Trenton news. It is a hope that has been tempered in fire and scoured by loss. It is the hope of the crocus, pushing through frozen earth. It is the hope of the builder, who sees not a ruin, but a foundation. You are no longer a passenger on this journey, swept along by events beyond your control. You are part of the crew. Your hands are on the ropes. You have played a part, however small, in shaping the destiny of something whose name you are all just beginning to learn. A nation. The echoes of 1776 continue to resonate around you, not as the loud clang of alarm bells, but as a steady, underlying hum. It is in the fierce debates over the new state constitution, a noisy, glorious argument about what it means to be free. It is in the grim determination of the women who keep their homes together while their husbands are away at war. It is in the eyes of the young apprentices who now drill with the militia, their boyish faces set with a man's resolve. This year of hardship and strife, this crucible of fire and ice, has forged something new in the soul of this place and in your own. The sacrifices made, the lives lost, have purchased more than just a military victory. They have purchased a future. A future that is being written day by day, in ledgers like yours, in quiet acts of courage, in the stubborn refusal to surrender. The journey continues. Softly now, you rest. You made it, through 1776. Sweet dreams.